Welcome to the Caminada podcast or my YouTube channel. I'm so glad you're here. I'm grateful and honored that you chose to listen or watch my show. In this conversation episode, I talked to this gorgeous soul, Alysa Rushton. Alysa is one of the world's most cutting-edge thought leaders on conscious life creation, overcoming addiction through unconventional techniques, and humankind awakening. Her breakthrough work for personal and planetary evolution can be found in the recorded programs like Reality by Divine Design and the Miracles and Manifesting Portal. Alysa has inspired thousands of students and clients and listeners to step into their greatness and truly live the healthy, love-filled, and abundant life they desire. She's on a personal and planetary mission to help you tap deeper into love, oneness, and help you awaken to your full true potential as an expression of the divine in physical form. In this conversation, we talked about her amazing and incredibly inspiring journey of overcoming addiction after a near-death experience that she went through. We also talked about integrating mind, body, and spirit, conscious eating, Ho'oponopono, sound healing, and the expansion of consciousness. Alysa is here to remind us of our divine power to transform, heal, and be the love and light that we are. Please don't forget to subscribe to my podcast or my channel so that you will never miss any future content. Enjoy the show. Hello, Alysa. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good. So nice to meet you, and thank you so much for being here on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited about today.
Yes, me too. And we've connected via Instagram, and I checked your beautiful work. I checked your monthly energy updates, right, that you do in the beginning of every month, and it's just beautiful. And I just feel that beautiful light coming from you. You radiate, you have this uplifting energy when I watch your videos. But I know that this hasn't always been the case, right? I checked your story in your website and I was amazed by the transformation from that picture you put on your website like years ago to today. And I felt also really inspired. And from your story on your website, I'm gonna just read a quote. You said, by the age of 27, I was over 220 pounds on 28 prescription medications, including end-of-life narcotics, and had to use a walker to get around. And yes, I was a 2-pack a day smoker. Wow. And if anybody's watching on YouTube, when you look at you, like you're so like your skin is glowing, you wouldn't say, right? So in this episode, I would love for you to share your journey from that moment to where you are today and how you're also helping fellow humans to heal and awaken. And I know there are many chapters to this. So my first question is, back to that time when you were 27. First, were you aware of your situation then, of how bad the situation was like for you? And second, when did you have the wake-up call?
I love this question. So yeah, I think, the thing of it is that I knew how bad it was, kind of, but I was so asleep in terms of I was so over medicated. And I was looking for something on the outside of me to make me feel better as a person. And ultimately, why I got to that point is because I had a whole bunch of trauma and pain that I had never dealt with, and it manifested in my body. And at the time, I didn't have the tools available to me that I do today to utilize. And so I turned to prescription drugs and smoking and drinking and, bowls full of cereal with sugar and milk and all the things I would use to soothe myself. And ultimately those things killed me. And you asked what was my moment of waking up. I literally died on the toilet of a massive drug overdose. I was on so many, you said 28 prescription drugs, including end of life pain management that they really only give people who are not expected to live, because it's so addictive that you just don't stand a chance of ever getting off of it. And it can also kill you.
Mhm.
So they only give it to people that are probably going to just pass away anyways, because you're sort of a lost cause.
Mm.
So I did. I died on the toilet, and I had my great awakening. And in that moment when I died, I got to pop out of my human consciousness.
So
And
like
I
a
got
near-death
to,
experience,
what's that?
like a near-death experience, and
Yes. And I got to be fully absorbed into what I call God consciousness, or the monad consciousness, where I had the awareness of being one with everything, all beings, all trees, all birds, all bees, all the planets, all the universes. And I understood it at a level that obviously a human mind, it's very hard for the human mind to hold. And so, a long story made very short, I came back into my body, and it took me about 5 years to integrate that experience. And I guess in some sense, I'm still integrating that experience because of all of the things that I got to understand about how the universe works that a human mind really can't understand. So I get that I had to go through the hardest experience of all, but also so that I can show my mission is to show people that no matter how hard it's been, no matter what you've been through, no matter what terror or horror or addiction or anything that you have, you can come back from that, and your body can heal from that. And you have a whole bunch of tools that you can use to start to move your life forward, and it can really be different. So in a nutshell, that's sort of, my moment was dying on the potty. But then I had a whole bunch of moments after that, because I was addicted to all these drugs,
Mhm.
any of them, like, normal prescription medications, and then not to mention the hard stuff. But I chose to get myself off of them and titrate myself down instead of enrolling in one of those 30-day programs.
Yeah.
And looking back, I always wondered at the time, why am I doing this? This makes no sense, because it was hard. But looking back, I realized I had to elongate my process of getting off all the drugs. And it did. It took me about 5 years in total. I took my last anything in 2010,
Mm.
and in May of 2010, in fact. And so I realized that it was the time of muscle building and skill building and doing the work and doing the meditation practice and doing all the practices that I have now, and it got them to stick. Whereas if I think I had been in a inpatient 30-day treatment program,
Yeah.
I don't think anything would have stuck.
Hmm. Wow. Amazing. Thank you for sharing. I have
Yeah.
a couple of questions. First about your NDE. Was it like you had the choice to stay where you were or come back and heal?
I love this question. So for me, what happened is that I did get sucked up into this beautiful God divine consciousness. And at some point, I went someplace else. And the someplace else that I went was a world very similar to our Earth. And everything looked the same. The people were all the same. And in fact, I was going around and hanging around all my old people and my old smoking buddies and my old drinking buddies. I was checking in on them, but I couldn't interact with them. I couldn't talk to them. And at first I thought, well, this is kind of strange. But then I felt sort of okay about everything. And I knew that I could stay there, and it was going to be a very healing place for me. And I was going to get an extraordinary amount of healing. And then at some point I knew, and it wasn't like my father came to me, because I don't have any dead relatives. So nobody that I knew came to me.
Mhm, mhm.
I didn't have any of the stuff that people talk about, because I didn't have any dead relatives that I knew or was close to that would have resonated for me.
Right.
So I just had this knowing, this energy came to me and said, you're going to you can stay here and you'll be here for a very long time, and you don't get to come back in the Alyssa body that you have had. And if you want to, you can come back. It'll be a very tough and long road, and you'll have a lot of work to do, but it'll be a very worthwhile process if you choose to do it, but you have the choice. And so, yeah, I did get the choice. I did get to choose to come back. And some days, along the journey, I started to question, God, did I choose the right thing?
Mm-hmm.
And then it wasn't until about, I forget how many years later, I read a book by Savannah Arienta. And she talked about the place that I went to, and I never knew what it was, but she's actually describing in her book. I forget what the book is called, Frequency or something like that. She was describing exactly the place that I went to, down
Wow.
to how it looked. And I was like, oh my God, there's other people that have been there and done that. So it turns out it's a place where people that are drug addicted or maybe die of suicide or traumatic events go to sort of heal and collect themselves as the soul and gain healing before their next go round,
Mm-hmm.
basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I did get the choice to come back, and I'm so grateful I did most days.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And as you were talking, there was one book that came to mind too by Anita Murjani,
Yeah.
Trying to Be Me. So she describes her ND experience and that she had the choice. And then she came back and she healed herself in a faster way than usual.
Yeah.
But she does talk about how difficult it was to integrate that experience, right?
Mm.
And you mentioned that it took about 5 years for you.
Yeah, it did take a long time. And I think part of the reason for me is because, as our human mind, we're taught that we're one person, and we're taught all of these aspects of life and how we come from this particular history. And as somebody who died and experienced a whole different level of consciousness, you start to understand that much of what we've been taught about being a human is not actually true or real.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this, when you come back into the human body, there's this cognitive dissonance that happens with what you're experiencing as a human and what you experienced up there as God consciousness. And the best way I can describe this to you and to the people who are watching is, if you can imagine watching your television set, and that's you and your consciousness, and you've got a television set that you're watching. That's our human experience, and we're watching one screen. And then if you can imagine God consciousness as watching literally, I don't know, 300 trillion screens all at once, and being able to have the experience of each one of those consciousnesses and hold all of that and hold the feeling tonality of it. Now, I hope I'm not going too deep here, but what my experience was up there was that in God consciousness, what I really wanted was, I wanted the folks, many of them, to remember that they were a piece of the divine, and that most of them had no awareness that they were in fact connected with the divine consciousness connection, and they felt very separate. And so that was like the longing to be that consciousness expressed all the way through. And it was, I got to tell you, Will, it's one of the most physical experiences I've ever had without a body. Does that
Mm.
make any sense? Like, my consciousness felt physical, and I felt like I could stretch in a million ways, and it was just amazing. But there was this aspect of wanting to feel that divine essence expressed through that television screen of the human being. So it's kind of like the divine consciousness was seeing out through our eyeballs.
Mm-hmm.
Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense? And that's
Totally.
how it comes in. So I hope that word picture helps. That's what
Yeah.
I experienced. And so trying to integrate that much consciousness and then fit it all back into my human mind kind of makes your brains
You
want to
didn't
fall
have
out.
that before, right? Before
No.
you didn't have that awareness of consciousness or oneness. Wow. So he was like, there you go.
Yeah, all at once. Bam. See if you can hold this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And I guess when, when you were back here, the integration also had to happen in your body, right? Healing, because as you mentioned earlier, all of that you had in your body was a reflection of all the emotional traumas that we just carry and we don't express that. So it's really that integration of the mind, body, and spirit, right?
Exactly.
How was the body integration for you in that process?
Yeah. Well, I can remember waking up in the ambulance and then again after my second go round with everything in the hospital and literally feeling like someone had thrust me down from 1,000 feet up in the air, bam, slammed me down into concrete, is how it felt to have my consciousness come back down into my body. It felt super hard, super heavy, and I was like, whoa, it was just this intense physical feeling of a huge vibrational, disconnect. It's
Yeah.
like going from light as air to the heaviest thing ever. It's almost, I guess the equivalent would be if I took you right now and then slammed you down instantly under 1,000 feet of water, you'd feel all this pressure and heaviness. And that's what it
Mhm.
felt like. And so from there, I know that's kind of intense to listen to, but from there, it was this process then of inviting my body into a different conversation, inviting my body into eating different foods. That was a big piece of it for me. I started my healing journey you know, at kind of both levels, but I literally had to switch out the foods I was eating. They weren't nourishing me. I sought out a health coach. And I remember sitting with this health coach on the first day, and her eyes were dancing with light and her skin was glowing. And I thought, I don't know what she has, but I want that. And you've seen my before pictures. And so you know that I really needed it,
And
you know.
I assume that's what your clients feel today about you.
Oh, well, I mean, I would love it if they did. And I hope that they do because, I've worked for the last really, my near death experience was in 2005. And so now, I guess today it's, what is it? It's 2021. So I'm bad at math. How many years ago is that even?
Think?
Yeah, it's a while ago. So, I've worked and worked and worked to obviously to keep the weight off, to integrate all of that. And then not only that, but to really include the practices to where people can come in and they can see what works. But for me, it started at the physical body. I had to change what I was eating, and one of the things, well, I believe that our physical body is the vehicle that holds our divine selves.
Hmm.
And so if we're putting junk in our physical body that clogs out that connection, it's very difficult for us to create magic. It's very difficult for us to remain in the present moment, which is where miracles are created. It's very difficult for us to work with the field because our energy is so bogged down
Yeah.
that we have that static in the channel, so we can't really connect very well. It's like trying
We
to
kind of
listen to
create
the
more,
radio.
density too, right? It's like we are
Yeah.
already dense beings compared to
Right.
higher dimensional beings, but then we just kind of bring more density to our bodies, right?
Exactly. And so I find that the more static we have in our channel with drugs, alcohol, foods that are staticky for you, whatever those things may be, even sometimes your environment, whatever they may be, and by the way, that's different for every person's body. I've learned that everybody's body is so different. So you really have
Mhm.
to have this process of diving into your physical body, finding out what works for you, but allowing it to lighten and nourishing it so that you can connect and you can tap in and you can really start to create your life in a much different fashion.
Yeah, I love that because they're all connected, right? It's like the more intuitive you are, the more you're going to take care of your body. So the better choices you're going to make in terms of your diet, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about then your healing journey. Like you mentioned that you started doing, meditations and healing modalities. What have you tried? What worked the best? What do you do today that still work for you, and that you add to your healing kit with your clients?
I love this question so much because I tried everything. I even tried monkey healing, where this woman screamed at me like a
What is
chimpanzee
that?
monkey.
Oh my
Yes.
God, I've never heard that.
I tried everything because I so wanted my body to heal and I was so ready to be done with everything. So for me, the very biggest things were my personal nutrition. That was huge. Sound healing was really big for me. So one of the things I can remember now, when I had my near death experience, at the time I had a PICC line in my arm that delivers medication to your heart. And I still had to go to the hospital every day for these treatments, right? Even after my near death experience. And so I remember, I forget whether it was the next day or the very couple of days after, as I'm sitting in this treatment chair, getting my body infused with all this medication. And I remember hearing this phrase on repeat, and it was not my voice, it was a man's voice. And it was, I'm getting better every day, or I'm getting better and better every day in every way. And that just went on repeat 1,000 times. And I had the experience of being on the other side and having this incredible experience of sound, and knowing that sound was like that's how we create, with our sound.
Yeah.
And so when I came back, I was instantly fascinated with all things sound healing. So I started researching, and because I knew nothing about sound. I also, when I was up there, I understood quantum physics, so all of a sudden I knew all of these things that I had no way of really understanding or knowing before. So now I'm having to incorporate it into my human brain and try to remember and make links.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started researching sound healing, and I started researching the frequency 528 megahertz and what that does for our body. And so I started listening to binaural beats and all of those types of beautiful meditations that I now utilize. I started using singing bowls and going into sound healings. And of course, now I use singing bowls in my practice, and I love them so very much, because they create that binaural beat, and sound frequency literally clears out the density in the physical body without us having to think about it or do a whole lot,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the reasons why I love it. I mean, literally, I can put somebody in a sound healing state and they will have a totally different experience in their physical body.
Yeah.
And they don't, because they take the mind out of it. You've clearly had an experience with
Oh,
this,
I love sound healing. Yes, and I've healed so much from it. Yeah.
right? And so, and even something, can I just share this? Even something as simple as these little chimes, your body hears that, and your body starts to go to work, and it starts to relax, and getting into that state of relaxation starts to really create that healing space. So for me, the things that work, to answer your question, I did everything. Like, there's probably nothing I haven't tried, including monkey healing.
Yeah, that's a new one for me.
Check that box. It's a new one. It was a new one for me too. But the things that I found the most beneficial were things that I could take responsibility for myself, things that I could really look at and go, okay, where can I take responsibility for what's showing up in my life? Right? If I'm seeing something in my life that I'm not preferring, that I don't like, a situation on repeat, I can take responsibility and transform that. And one of the things that I think was a catalyst for my whole experience was I was kidnapped, and at the age of 21 at my workplace. And so it was a big trauma for me, and my life was threatened. And so now on the other side of this experience, and on the other side of my near-death experience, I'm driving around every day and I'm feeling like I'm being watched, or I'm feeling really scared of life. And so it was just my consciousness being reflected back to me. So I think one of the things that, in addition to the meditation practices and the sound healing and the nutrition, it's really important to take a look at our thoughts and feelings and beliefs and see what's being reflected to us in the outer world. And once we can claim responsibility for it, once we can say, okay, I know what I'm seeing is really hard, or I know what I'm seeing is really painful. And I acknowledge that. And it's a program that I've been running. I don't have to be blamed for it. I don't have to shame myself for it, but I can clean that program up. So that for me was really powerful when I took responsibility for everything in my life. And I started to use this practice called Ho'oponopono, which is an ancient Hawaiian practice. And I was in fact called to go live in Hawaii, and I still do bounce back and forth there part-time now. But I was really called to dive into this practice of Ho'oponopono, which is a forgiveness practice. And I have my own version of it now, which you can, maybe we'll pop a link in here for. But for me, it's a rewritten version about unwinding yourselves from the programs that we've had installed either from our parents, from our genetics, from traumatic experiences that happened when we weren't paying attention, you know, and just seeing what's going on and then reprogramming that belief or that program. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And can you tell us what the Ho'oponopono is for those who never heard of it?
Yeah. So in Hawaiian culture, there was this practice where when someone wronged you or you wronged them, you would gather in a circle, or families would do this, and they would make Ho'oponopono, and it means to make right. Ho'oponopono, loosely translated, means to make right. And so what the practice is to say, you know, I'm sorry for what I've done. Thank you for showing me that I have done this. Thank you for, you know, whatever it is. Thank you for, you know, allowing me to sit here with you today. Please forgive me, and I love you. And it's any combination of that. But what those phrases do, I love you, I'm sorry, thank you, please forgive me, is they allow energy to run through your system and unwind from what you've been doing or what you've even been projecting out there. Now, I teach it a little bit differently, and I don't actually recommend that you call the family together and do this process. I think you can actually do this by yourself, and you can imagine a person that you may have had a lot of conflict with, and you can, let's say you've been in conflict with your business partner, and they are angry all the time and frustrated, and that makes you feel stressed out. So what you might say is to yourself, let's say your business partner's name is Sally. You can say in your mind, Sally, I love you. Thank you for showing me that I've been running the program of anger and frustration. Please forgive me for running that program, and know that I'm deleting it now. And so all you're doing is you're just talking to your consciousness, talking to your mind's consciousness and the field. Remember that the field is an actual, even though we can't see it, it's subatomic particles that you're impacting with your consciousness too.
Yeah.
So what I find when people do this process of Ho'oponopono, I mean, magical transformation happens. I've seen people get paid back debts that they've been owed for years and years. I've seen people come back into reunion with a long lost love. All sorts of magical things happen because we're not housing the energy program that was causing those circumstances to be created in our lives to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, because I think that ritual or that prayer, first of all, like you said, is you taking responsibility, right, for yourself, because that's all we are responsible for, really. And also dissolving the bond between you and the other person or that situation through the power of words and the emotional body, right?
Exactly. So well put. Yeah, it's dissolving that bond. And really truly what we see on the outside of us is just a reflection of our consciousness. And I think for me what happens with so many people is, what I'll hear from clients again and again is, well, this person's doing this thing over here, and then they'll see it again over here. They'll see the same thing happening,
Yeah.
and at some point we just have to go, okay, let me just be honest with myself. That might be something, just might be a program that I'm running. And we don't have to, again, we don't have to shame ourselves or blame ourselves. We can just chuckle and go, okay, well, if I'm running the program, I can delete the program too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's that kind of game between the ego and the spirit self, because um, I personally believe that there is a time for you listening to the voice of your ego and perhaps even have those victim mentality thoughts, that the ego wants us to think. And for me personally, I don't think it's bypassing that. I think it's giving the time and giving the space and
Mhm.
then switching and saying, I can hear you, I see you, I love you, but I'm going to take responsibility and I'm going to listen to my spirit and my intuition and take. I think what's coming up for me is really the taking responsibility for your healing journey, right?
Mhm.
um, and I think for you, after all of that experience, you finally understood that it's like up to you. Even though
Mhm.
you had all this beautiful experience of oneness, it was all up to you, right? To make the decisions, to make the choice, to heal.
Yeah. And I do love what you said about, because the truth is, we are still human beings having a human experience, and we also have an ego. We just do. And so I think to deny that ego and to deny what the feelings are and some of the victim stuff that comes up, it still comes up for me. and
Mm-hmm.
i and I don't think that there's a way, at least at this time, to stop that process. I mean, I think maybe that's the ultimate goal, although I don't really know. But well, I love what you said about allowing that, but then not letting yourself stay there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the secret key for me, is allowing that to run for a shortened period of time. Because what happens with most people is they allow that to run in their system one day, and then by the next day it's still running,
Yeah.
and then they're often running in victim mode,
Mm-hmm.
and they're never getting out of that. And so I think it's a slippery slope. I know it was for me. It was a very slippery slope for me to not only get out of being in victim mode all the time, but to be able to find that healthy balance of the two. And so it's kind of that razor's edge,
Yeah. Yeah. And um, you were talking about sound healing and the things that you do to help your clients. So today, how do you help the people that come to you that might be somewhere in that space that you were 16, 20 years ago? What
Yeah,
are
that's a great
the main
question.
the main things that you do?
So typically, the people that come to me now are a little further along the path. So that's what I notice. I notice that I don't get the real sick ones that were where I was.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the first thing I noticed. But what I do with people in general, and I do this inside the Miracles portal every month, is I do a sound healing every month, because I love a good sound bath. And I think it's so beneficial for the energy system to get a frequency tune up. And it's kind of like if you had a guitar. Do you play guitar?
A
You're
little
from
bit.
Brazil.
Yeah.
Brazil. Okay. So yeah, I mean, come on. So yeah, so when you play the guitar, you know that you've got to tune that guitar. You can't just let it sit there. It's going to get out of tune. So that's our bodies too, and musically speaking as well. So I love sound healing, and that's one of the things that I do with most people is we give them a sound frequency tune up. The other thing that, oh my gosh, I couldn't be more passionate about this is, my belief is that you are your best healer. You are your best source of wisdom. Your body is your
Amen.
best source, right? And I think what happened, one of the reasons why I had my near death experience is because I was listening to doctors tell me what to do with my body versus knowing how to do. I didn't even know how to do that for myself. No one taught me how to listen to my body. So, one of the things I teach people is how to listen to your body, how to really connect in with your highest source of wisdom and intuition so that you can trust implicitly the divine guidance you get because you're your best connection. And what I think's happened in our history is people have been taught, well, this person over here, or this priest or pastor or this healer knows better for you what's for you. And a lot of times, in fact, I did a retreat with a woman who we solely worked on. At this private retreat, we solely worked on her deepening her intuition and her connection. And we went out to the horse barn and we watched how her connection would impact these animals' ability to come close to her or not when she was tapped into that connection. So to wrap it up, I mean, basically, I teach people how to have their own divine connection and stop circumnavigating that connection outside of themselves. Because ultimately, coming back into the self and remembering that we're a direct source of that is, I'm pretty sure, what I think this whole thing is about for us all collectively.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I think this is so, so important. Um, Even, or I would say, especially in the spiritual community, because we tend to give our power away to that psychic that perhaps can connect with your spirit guides faster than you, which that can be helpful, and I've done it before. But I think ultimately it's all about you connecting with your inner guidance, with your inner tuition, right? And you connecting with your spirit guides, and just knowing what's right for you, or filtering what's good for you.
Yes, exactly. And the other thing that I think is really important is, just because there's somebody outside of you who's saying they can do it faster and better and quicker than you, I don't really know how clear their channel is. They
Yeah.
might not be talking to your people. They might be talking to their people, or a filtered version of what you need to hear. And so that's why I love helping people really get back in touch with their own wisdom,
Mhm.
which is so profound. The level of wisdom that's contained within each and every one is so profound. And everybody's on their own individual journey too, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
there's so many different ways that can express. So I feel super blessed to get to do this work. It's really yummy.
Yeah. It's amazing that everybody is on their individual journey, but we are all in the same journey, right? I say we're all in the same journey, but in different routes,
Yes.
right? But we're all in that journey of oneness and being connected with that one consciousness. Um, and just to talk about the sound healing that you were talking about. I'm a musician, so I'm a singer, songwriter too, and so I love music and sound. So I use that in my practice as well, and some chanting. I think sound is super healing. And I know you also talk about the 5D ascension, and the 9D, the 9 dimensions, right? So as I heard you were talking about sound, I also work with the 9 dimensions of consciousness, mainly from this book called The Alchemy of 9 Dimensions of Consciousness by Barbara Hand-Clow, which is a channeled work from the Pleiadians, who I'm very much connected with. And I love that, the seventh dimension is all about sacred sound, and the sixth is geometry, the fifth is love. And I used to say quite often, like, you are love, you are light, I am light, I am love, but we are also sound, right? Because
Yes.
there's light in the eighth dimension, and then there's sound, because the light creates the sound, and sound creates geometry. And then when you start expanding your consciousness and really like digging deep into these awesome metaphysical subjects that I love, all of these things start making more sense, right? Because you're like, okay, I understand why I feel so good when I go to that sound bath. because it's really like vibrating at a cellular and soul, spiritual, emotional level, right?
Totally, totally, it is, and I love that you're onto that book by Barbara Handcloud. She's an amazing author, and yeah, it is so fun when you're tapping into the dimensions. And what I love most about sound and light, which if you've ever heard one of my sound baths, you know that I use both, is that your mind, you're bypassing your mind, and which is so cool because your mind wants to make everything mean something and wants to assign it into a little cubicle somewhere. And the light and the sound they come in and they just say, all right, what needs to be done in this body right now? And let's go to work and do that, which is what I love. It makes it easy on the physical body and you feel so good.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. Can you tell us how, if people are interested in working with you, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, so you can go to my site, alysarushton.com, and I've got a ton of free resources for you, meditations, things that I think you'll love, a ton of free videos that you can check out. So I'd love for you to do that. And then if you feel called to, you can go to the Work With Me page, and I've got a ton of classes and advanced energy trainings that I teach people how to do a lot of the stuff that I learned up there. And now I teach it down here. So
you
that's
do a
really
lot
fun.
of work around manifestation too, right? From what I saw.
Yeah, because for me, and I struggle because people know the word manifesting, but I really feel it's creating. It's you being a divine creator. But what I like to teach people how to do is really reshape their reality. And many of us have stuff that maybe we wish was different. And so I show people how to do that in a way that really works for them along with their soul and is fully aligned with your highest timeline, with your best life, and how to, navigate and call in and draw in experiences so that you feel supported. And ultimately, I go back to a Bible story, and I'm not necessarily a Bible person, but when you need loaves and fishes, you can create the loaves and fishes. And what I'm teaching you basically is that you are a divine creator and that you're connected to that. And I'm showing you how to be connected so that you can just create and manifest what it is you need. It is a different style of life and type of living. But I can tell you that it's very fun to have the ability to, in the moment, if you need something, to be able to have it appear when you need it, and really call it in and work with the energies in new and different ways than a lot of people have been taught. So yes, thank you for asking about that.
Yeah, and I know it's a big topic. Manifestation itself is a big topic, but what would you say is the connection, the relation between the healing work and the manifestation work?
This is a good question. Do you mean specifically like if you can you manifest if you're not healed? Is that kind of what you're asking,
Yeah,
or?
or how important is the healing process
Mm,
and the relation with manifesting the life that you want? Or
Perfect. I love this question. So I think how I'll answer it is a lot of people will say that if you're a vibrational match for what you want, you will have it. I would actually argue with that all day long. Because I know people that are a super high vibration and they still don't have what they want. So your physical body's frequency and your healing that you do is really important. The frequency that your body holds, the foods you're eating, all of that's really important. And there's a lot of other factors that go into creating the life you want. For example, if you're trying to manifest a large sum of money and you're a super high flying vibration and you're just like loving, and you're love and light, but you have a belief that tells you cannot, at the end of the day, you're going to run into some issues. So there's a couple of ways that you can work with that. But ultimately, I do think that being a clear channel, meaning you're eating foods that are good for you, you're exercising your body, you're getting motion in, you're doing things that light you up. I think the more clear your physical body is, the easier it is for you to work with the energy
Mhm.
and ask it to do what you need it to do is ultimately what I think. And I hope that answers your question.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And you mentioned the belief, and I guess that's very much related with the healing journey, right? Sometimes you're not attracting or allowing that abundance in because there's that belief, because there's that little trauma that we need to look at, right?
Yes. Yes.
Excellent. Well, to wrap up, I have some fun and deep questions. So there, I suggest that you don't overthink, just like the first thing that pops up. Um, so it's fun. um, so the first question is, what's your definition of healing?
Hmm. My definition of healing is actually feeling like you're whole and complete, feeling like there's nothing that you need to be constantly working on or doing or fixing, and you just feel at peace, even if you have a little something left to heal. You just
Yeah,
have healing. Yeah, right?
because we always do have a little layer, right?
Little
We're all,
something.
I say it's a giant onion that we peel off the layers and then there's one more layer, right?
Yeah, exactly. Being at peace with it.
Great.
Mhm.
So imagine that all the books in the world were going to be deleted forever. If you had to save only one book, which one would you save and why?
Well, number one, I want to say this is an impossible question for me to answer because I am a voracious reader. Which one would I save and why? Oh God, there's like a million books coming to my head. I'm going to go with this book that's right here in front of me. It's called The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. And it's a great book for anybody who's getting started or in the middle path of the journey. Have you read this book, The Biology of Belief?
No.
It's fantastic. It's actually by a neuroscientist who studies how your thoughts and feelings and beliefs impact your cells. And he's done a lot of studies under the microscope. And you can actually see when you change your thoughts and your feelings and your beliefs, how it changes your DNA and it changes your cells. So, The Biology of Belief, I'm going to say by Bruce Lipton.
Yeah, I love that. And when you said change your thoughts, the one that came to mind was the one by Dr. Wayne Dyer. I think it's Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one too.
Yeah, could we just put anything by Wayne Dyer we would also want to save? Just put him in
Yes.
some category.
We'll just
Anything
hide
by
it.
Wayne. Yeah.
We'll hide a box. All right, next one. It's also a hypothetical question. So, if you were to be turned into a Marvel superhero, what would be your superpower and what would be your character's name?
Ooh, can I make up a character?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I would be turned into some sort of amazing unicorn. And my superpower would be to go and fly around and spread rainbows and sparkles and glitter and lights everywhere. That would be my superpower. And just somebody's having a bad day and dun, 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 I fly in and just shower them with sparkles and glitter and magic.
Yes, I can totally see that. Love it. What is the one thing that people would be surprised to know about you?
Hmm. Well, besides the fact that I was a 2 pack a day smoker, I think that people would also be surprised to know that maybe I lived off of fast food, junk food. Oh, and here's my best one. Can I say one more?
Sure.
I'm a high school dropout. Dropped out of high school when I was 15. I think that's
Wow.
always a shocker for the people. Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Um, Next one. Let's suppose that we sign contracts before coming to this life, and then we choose what we came here to learn as well as to teach. I assume you believe some that's kind of true in some way. What do you think this would be for you in this lifetime? as Alysa?
I think if I did sign a contract, what I was supposed to teach and learn, I think I was supposed to learn specifically how to unprogram and unwind from past ancestral stuff and really recreate a new version of human and recreate a new version of earth and help to guide that in some way. And, obviously, I've been through a series of very difficult experiences in my life. It has not been an easy journey, and people take a look at me and they make a lot of assumptions, right, about what's my life's been.
Yeah.
And then they hear my full life story, and usually people are crying and their jaws are dropping, and they have a different opinion of me afterwards. So I think ultimately what many of us, not to project too much, but many of us are here to do is really create a different experience for humanity. And I'm hopeful that that's what I'm doing, and I'm hopeful that I
Yes,
do it
you
every
are.
day.
Yes, you are. And last question, it's called Three Truths. I actually got this from a podcast that I love by Lewis Howes. And yeah, so he asked this at the end, and I love that question. So the idea is that, in many years from now, you are ready to finally make the transition, and you're in your deathbed, but all the work that you've done has been deleted, and all you have is a piece of paper in your hand, and you can write your three truths on this piece of paper. So that's going to be your legacy. What would be your three truths
About me as a person or about my legacy?
about life in general? Like, all the work you've done has been deleted, so nobody can go look for your videos on YouTube or your books or whatever. So that's all you have, that piece of paper. What would be your three truths that you would want to leave to humanity?
My three truths that I'd want to leave to humanity. I think the first one is that, and hopefully I was an example of too, is that you are an expression of divine love and divine light, and you get to choose that in every moment.
Yeah.
I think my next one is that it's okay to be authentic. It's okay to be you. It's okay to be whoever it is that you came here to be. And it's okay to unwind from the programming that you might have had around not being the truth of you.
Mm.
And then what would my third one be? My third truth would be, amen, you didn't get to take any of this stuff with you except the lessons. So enjoy the lessons while you're here, my friends.
Yes, yes. Enjoy life. I love that. Alysa, I want to acknowledge you for your courage to choose to live, and your vulnerability to share your story and inspire others and guide fellow humans into awakening and healing and help raise the vibration of the planet. So thank you very much for shining your light.
My gosh, thank you so much for having me here today. This has been super fun. This is the most fun I've had all week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so excited.
Thank you. Much love to you.
Oh, so much love to you too.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you would like to learn more about Alysa's work, please visit her website, www.alysarushton.com. And if you want to join Alysa's inner circle, you can go to createmiraclesdaily.com. As usual, you can find the links on the show's notes. And once again, if this has brought you value, please subscribe to my podcast and take a screenshot of it, share it to your Instagram story, and be sure to tag me and Alysa so that we know that it's brought you value. And your friends might benefit from this too. As always, keep shining your light, keep your heart open, and let love lead the way. I love you. See you in the next episode.